Welcome to Paul's Heart. I'm Paul, author of the book Paul's Heart, Life as a Dad and a 35-Year Cancer Survivor, available on Amazon. You can also find me on YouTube on the channel at Paul's Heart, PaulsHeart. Make sure you go over to that channel and subscribe in case anything happens to this TikTok page of mine. I'm continuing on with follow-ups after your 5-year mark of cancer survivorship. This is part 2, so make sure you get over and watch part 1. And I want to continue on with what I was talking about there. I just gotten pulled off the treadmill. The cardiac technician had seen something on the EKG. I had begun to feel a symptom in my chest, and they had me sitting out in the lobby waiting to be called back to an exam room where I would meet up with a cardiologist. I didn't realize that's who I'd be seeing, but it soon became quite evident. So the nurse came out, took me to the back, and she said, "The doctor will be with you very shortly." I knew this wasn't going to be good news, but I definitely was not expecting what he would tell me. Dr. S, I'm only going to use his initial, came in, and a young guy, just like me, probably about my age, said, "I don't usually do this, but I'm 100% certain that you've got a blockage." Now, something is starting to click with me. I'm really not sure what he's saying. He continued on and said, "I want you to go next door into the hospital, over to our cath lab. We're going to get you checked in, and tomorrow morning we're going to pop a couple stents in you, and you'll be good as new. You'll be back up in about a week's time." And at that point, I went into instant denial. If you read my book, I'm good at being in denial when you confront me about my health. And at that time, I was working as a disc jockey, and I had a wedding coming up that weekend. And so I went into my bargaining mode. Think Kubler-Ross, the stages of death, the anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, all that stuff. And I said, "Look, I don't really have time for that right now. I have a wedding that I have to DJ this weekend. I'll tell you what, set me up for Monday morning. I'll be there first thing, I promise." And the doctor said, "You don't have that kind of time. You're not listening to me. I need to get you into that cath lab and get those stents in you." And he's still not really saying how bad this is. Then again, I don't know if he was even aware of it. But he showed me the pictures that were taken with that radioactive dye, and he could basically show me my heart not having any blood in it, because the left anterior, well, I know it now, but at the time, there was a main artery going to the heart that wasn't supplying blood to the heart. So he convinced me to go into the cath lab in the hospital next door. And I woke up to the doctor at the foot of my bed, and I had a friend who happened to be a paramedic. She was visiting me. I saw her after I came to, still fairly groggy, and he's trying to explain basically what he saw. They did what's called a catheterization, and that's where usually they go up through an artery in the leg to the heart to see where any blockage would be. And he had both the picture that was taken up there, and then to make it simpler, he had a drawing of my heart with the arteries and stuff like that. And there were 3 points that he was pointing out, but most notably was the left anterior descending artery. The LAD was 90% blocked. My friend, who was the paramedic, responded, "Oh my God, it's a widowmaker." My cardiologist said, "Yeah, we don't like to call it that, but in a sense, that's what it is. We have you set up for emergency bypass surgery tomorrow. You're going to have 3 bypasses done, including the LAD and 2 other arteries that we found. that need to be bypassed. That was a shock. It wouldn't be until later, and that'll be a different video that I do. I'm not going to do part 3, but basically, I ended up having the bypass surgery. They ended up only doing 2 for another reason that'll be in another video, because eventually I would have to have that third one that they didn't fix stented anyway. But I'll never forget the words that my cardiologist told me with how serious this was. That it wasn't a question of if I was going to die, but when. And the fact that, and I want you to listen to me, because this has nothing to do with being a cancer survivor who went through radiation therapy, took chemotherapy that affected the heart. You can just be a regular person, never had cancer. My message to you is, if you have a chest pain, get to the hospital. And I'm going to strongly recommend calling 911. Yeah, I probably wouldn't do it myself. I'm notorious for that. But you need to get help as soon as possible. It wasn't a question of if I was going to die from a fatal heart attack, but when. Those of us who have this particular blockage, unless intervention can be done almost immediately, you don't survive it, which is why they call it a widowmaker. My primary care doctor made the right decision at the right time. Any later would have been disastrous for me. The cardiologist did what he needed to do, and now was going to have to turn it over to a cardiac surgeon who was going to have to do the open heart surgery, which that's what this scar is. And that's another video. But the problem, my point is that I thought I was free after that 5 years. But because of the amount, and this is important to remember too, because today's cancer treatments are much safer. They're not without danger, but they're much safer. They use much less radiation. There's much less exposure. But if you were treated back in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and you were treated with high-dose radiation, chances are you may have something like this brewing inside of you. And unless you're followed up regularly for it, you have no idea. Sure, ignorance is bliss. You go through life not even thinking about it. Doctors may not even be aware of it when they finally see you and be able to connect the 2 dots to each other. But if you have this chest tightness, get to the emergency room. Let them tell you it's nothing, because if it's something, you're going to be in the right place to have something done right away. This is just one example of things that I'm dealing with, long-term side effects. And again, not every cancer survivor develops these. Some go through without any. But the key is to be followed up by your primary care after they are told what to look for by the oncologist. Oncologists know what to look for, and it's important to make your primary care doctor a partner in your care, because they're going to take over. And when they find something, they can refer you to the specialist you need to be seen. This is important. You can still be done with cancer. You can still put cancer behind you. But you still need to have your care followed up on. I can't stress that enough. Until next time, this is Paul's Heart.